What's up, YouTube? This is Maverick Hunter Nova Zard X here, bringing you a Sky Striker deck profile, and this will be for post Rise of the Duelist. So, not going to waste your time with the pointless intro, we're going to get on with it. So first off, most important card of the deck, Sky Striker Ace Raye at 3 copies, and up next, of course, we play not 2, but 3 copies of Rose. In my opinion, and I firmly believe that 3 is an absolute must for the deck, because you still get those bricky hands where you just don't see an ace. If you don't see an ace in your hand at all, if you don't have access to an ace each turn, you basically can't play the game and you lose. You just lose so much tempo if you don't see her. So just having an access to an ace to go into your links, which is basically the deck's main lifeline, is super important, and I would not cut her any less. If you can get away with 2, I guess you can get away with 2, but personally I firmly believe that 3 is a must-have until we get engaged back, because consistency is key, and I am a firm believer in consistency. She's just too good. Having access to her at all times is great, especially because when you're playing cards like Desires, you have a good chance of banishing a good amount of your aces, and that lowers your consistency as you're trying to grind. And this is a grindy deck. Its main goal is to win the grind. So as much as possible, you always want to have access to her and save your searches for like other cards and stuff like that. So definitely love, and I love that I'm rocking these 3 Starlight Rares, so all the more reason to play 3 for me, personally. But from there on, we move on to the hand trap lineup. Currently testing out 3 copies of Ash, the best hand trap in the game, period. 3 copies of Veiler. I personally have been wanting to swap these out for Ghost Ogres, but the access to Haka Fibrax into Selene into access code is just too good of a combo. She's still pretty good in that regard, and she's still like just a standard great negate. I just would consider playing Ogre over her at some point, maybe just to deal with like our more control heavy format. But so far she's just been doing her job really nicely, and I like that. And finally, to round off the hand trap lineup, I play 3 copies of Impermanence. Now, with Rise of the Duelist, we have triple tactics talent, of course, so that's one of the reasons why I would prefer to stick with Impermanence. It just got a lot better because, you want to have some sort of interaction that doesn't trigger that card that gives them pluses, of course. And, of course, this is one of those few hand traps that allows you to shut down your, interact with your opponent during your turn. So if your opponent has a board, a board built, they have something like Zexal or something, you can negate it. And also this does combo with like some other cards that I have in the deck too, so there's that. Moving on to the main spell, we're going to start with the generic spell lineup. I play 1 copy of Upstart, of course, for the spell count, Rhoda, Terraforming, 1 copy of Mystic Mine, 3 Cosmic Cyclone, which is still really good, especially in our more control-based format. And right now I'm only playing 2 copies of Desires. And the reason I'm playing 2 right now is because we have now added 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talent, which is basically your other draw card or, multiple utility card. I've always been pretty iffy with Desires in this deck because I just don't like destroying a lot of the cards that this deck really likes to search. As much of a necessary evil is, it's still a good card, of course, but like, it's like one of those cards that I've been pretty iffy about, I definitely would suggest that you run 3 if you don't have access to Triple Tactics Talent, because it's just consistency is important, of course, and it's another free spell that you could just throw out, activate in your graveyard. But since we're playing 2 copies of Talent, this is all the space that I can find room for it. And you could argue I could probably cut the 3rd copy of Rose, but you know what? Rose is already my consistency card. Instead of trying to draw into it, maybe I could just like have the card by itself in my hand without destroying my deck. So I personally feel like this is a very good pickup. It allows you to play through hand traps and basically like gives you more interactions. It's a potential Widow Anchor, since you can take control of your opponent's stuff too. It's a very, very nice card. And finally, in my opinion, the best card in the deck right now is 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. This card is very, very amazing. It definitely gave this deck a massive, massive boost. You can look up what the card does if you don't know what it does, but pretty much this is basically adding like 3 more copies of Widow Anchor in your deck, and it's so amazing in this deck, especially because you play a lot of quick play spell cards. You have a lot of background that you can interact with, and there's just like so many combo lines that you can basically, what do you call this? You could improvise in your deck. So like there's like a lot of scenarios like let's say your opponent has a combo, your typical combo board. They have like Appaloosa, Negator 1, Negator 2, Negator 3, something like that. And you have like a bunch of striker spells in your hand or something, or just generic spells in general. You could go perform combos such as like say activate Desire as opponent chains and negate. You chain like Hornet Drones, and then all of a sudden you chain Droplet, send those two spells that you just activated, and then all of a sudden you could you basically like wipe your board and all of your cards go through. Or and with the striker spells especially, this is very powerful because if you can set this off, like say. You can basically set off the triple spell count to fulfill the other condition of your other striker spells. So let's say something like your opponent activates Imperial Order in response to your Afterburners, and you have like another like one spell in graveyard. You can chain Droplets, negate whatever they have, send as many copies of spells as you need, send the Afterburners, and when the chain resolves, this will negate whatever monster they're trying to they have that you need to deal with. Afterburners resolves then with 3 spells in the grave, and it's no longer defilled, so it's unaffected by Imperial Order, stuff like that. It's just very amazing. And because it's a shrink, it also allows you to it allows your aces to beat over stuff, which has been like a major weakness for the deck for quite some time now. And just like the fact that has its own built-in spell speed 4 mechanics, so it's kind of like as if you're playing multiple copies of multi-roll, and it just gets rid of your throwaway stuff. And you can even combo with graveyard effects like Rose too to trigger stuff in grave. So this is just a very amazing card in this deck. If you're planning to play in this deck competitively, I highly recommend playing 3 copies of these. These have been very, very amazing for me so far. But those are the generic spells. Going on to striker cards, I play 2 copies of Area Zero. 2 copies of Widow Anchor, since it's still 2. I'm only playing 2 copies of Short Cannon right now. Reason being is because I don't have room for the third as much as I would kind of like to play the third one. And because Droplets already fulfills our interaction for the opponent's turn, and I also needed to make room for the other copy of Talent. So you basically have all those other new and possibly more powerful spell interactions that you don't really need this as badly as you used to, because this the third copy of Shark used to be just like a sort of a pseudo replacement for the third Widow Anchor, but you have better cards to fill that role now, and they're a lot more flexible and cover a lot more matchups versus just like it's kind of like standard Call by the Grave. Of course, next we got 2 copies of Afterburners, very good card. The 1 copy of Multi-Roll, 1 Hornet Drones, and 1 Eagle Booster, which I feel like it's kind of a must-have because, especially since we're playing a more control-based format with stuff like Dogmatica, Salad, a lot of people have player hand traps, and just Eagle Booster is just a good way for you to make your secure your pushes, and basically it's a cheap way for you to ensure that you have a next turn without committing all of your hate to the board. Like instead of setting all of your anchors and stuff on the field, if you're afraid your opponent's gonna break it, you could just like set like 1 active Eagle Booster basically saves you an entire turn, and saves all of your other back row so that you can instead use that to break their board for next turn. It protects access code from Nibiru. It does like a lot of things right now. So it's a pretty good card. I would highly suggest playing like 1 copy of it. It's such a versatile spell. And basically, that is the main deck. So we're going to go on to the extra, and I'm going to move on to the side afterwards. So for the extra deck, 3 copies of Kagari, 3 copies of Shizuku. I only play 2 copies of Hayate. Now, people are going to give me probably some bump for this, but for the longest time, I played this deck for ever since its release, ever since ever since then I've noticed that I've only really needed 2 Hayate for the majority of my games. And honestly, I feel like if you can manage your resources properly with this deck, you're really only going to need to see these 2 copies, especially because with access code being being such a major win condition for you. you'll end games a lot quicker, to the point where you don't really need to grind so much with the third Hayate. If you feel like you kind of need her to push a little bit, you can just conserve her, since there's like like those odd turns where you don't really need to mail anything really important. You know, you could just go straight to Kagari Shizuku, or just like you know, maybe like Kaina Shizuku or something, and then that would basically fulfill like whatever you need for that turn. It's a little hard to explain, but like the grind in the long term, you're really only gonna need these two for like the most part. And biggest reason is because extra deck space is super tight, and I wanted it to fit in like a couple of like one extra card to increase the deck's extra deck flexibility, which is like one of its strengths. So finally, we have the last two aces. We have the one copy of Kaina and the one copy of Zeke, which is good. For the rest of the generic links, we have Halki Vibrox, Celine, Hita, and of course Big Boy Access Code. And for the last card, I play one copy of Ningirsu. Very good card, especially because a single Shark Cannon netting you a Link 2 from your opponent's graveyard plus a Link ace basically gets you into this super easy. And sometimes you need him to get over bigger bosses, like you know, Avermax and stuff like that. Like, yeah, Droplet also does that for you, but like having this on top of all that just makes your pushes flexible. And of course, him plus Area 0 summoning an ace basically also makes you access code. So that's like another route that you can go into to push for a game. So he's just a very good card in his own for just like push removal, and this is your win condition. So that's the extra, and finally we have the side deck, which I'm currently still in. For the most part, it's pretty similar to the Ryan Duelist. 3 copies of Judgment, and 3 copies of Tikaboo for when you're going first. For backrow decks, the 1 copy of Jamming Waves, and 2 copy of MST. Basically to deal with pesky floodgates and stuff. I'm still kind of like testing this. For graveyard decks, 3 copies of DD Crow. And lastly, I have Nibiru in the side deck for when I play against like Adam Emancipator. And the reason I have this in the side is because, again, we're playing a lot more control-heavy decks that don't really summon that often. And I feel like Droplets kind of like covers our covers that matchup for us without having us lose to like random decks like Numeron, you know, Numeron Guru, all those variants and other stuff like that. The Mirror, basically like those matchups, and a lot of people have been kind of like figuring out how to play around this. So like having this in the side, I kind of feel a lot more comfortable with, just to cover those matchups that still like to combo and all that. But yeah, that's basically the deck. Hope you guys liked it. Hope you guys got some inspiration out of it. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comment section, of course, whatever it is. Feel free to ask me about my ratios. I've been doing pretty good with the deck so far. I played it for a long time, and it's my favorite deck of all time. So I've stuck with my guns with it, and I'm just happy that it's seeing at least like a good amount of success, even as I guess you could say like a tier 3 deck or something. But yeah, love the deck so much. Feel free to talk to me about it, share your enthusiasm, and you know, feel free to ask me questions, give me suggestions. That's about it. I'll be signing out. This is Maverick Hunter, Nova Zord X. Seeing you.